Good morning. I am Antoinette Basilio, and for this presentation, it would tackle about the non-communicable diseases, stroke. The word stroke comes from the idea receiving a strike or blow, as that is how quickly strokes appear. All of a sudden, people are struck by this illness. Did you know that every year, more than 15 million people worldwide have a stroke, and of these, 5 million die and another 5 million are left disabled. So imagine how many people are struck by stroke yearly. What exactly is a stroke? So stroke happens when blood rich in oxygen cannot reach the brain cells, and cells begin to die. Strokes are put into two groups depending on the problem in the blood vessels supplying the brain. There can either be a blockage called the ischemic stroke or a bleed called the hemorrhagic stroke. The majority of strokes are blockages. It is important to identify early on which sort of stroke has happened, as each have very different treatments. Blockages are commonly caused by the buildup of fatty materials in blood vessels. This fatty buildup may lead to a clot which blocks the blood supply, just like in a heart attack. This is why a stroke can be thought of as a brain attack. A clot may occur within the brain, or it can travel from another part of the body, commonly the blood vessels in the neck. Clots may also travel from the heart, which may happen when you have an irregular heartbeat called atrial fibrillation, or AF. If the blockage is detected within a few hours, a clot-busting medication is sometimes given to dissolve the clot, and this is called thrombolysis. Bleeding strokes happen when a blood vessel bursts suddenly, causing blood to leak in or around the brain. In this stroke, blood on brain can lead to swelling. It is a serious problem which may require surgery in some cases. Sometimes, stroke symptoms completely disappear in less than 24 hours, and this is called a mini stroke or the TIA. Often, symptoms only last a few minutes, but just like with a full-blown stroke, you must go to the hospital immediately if you suspect a TIA. This is because a TIA is a warning sign that you are at a high risk of having a full stroke. Now, which or what supply the brain with all the fresh, rich blood? Most of the blood supply that comes to the brain is through the carotid or vertebral arteries, and these arteries will branch off into the other arteries and will fuel those sections. For each section of the brain has specific functions. Now, the brain cells are super sensitive. They cannot go very long without that fresh, rich, oxygenated blood, and within as little as 5 minutes, these brain cells started to become affected, and they begin to die. And when they die, it can be irreversible. There's no replacing. As the brain controls the whole body, the symptoms of strokes can be wide-ranging depending on what part of the brain is affected. Now, let's take a quick look on the parts of the brain. And we'll start at the front. The frontal lobe, which is represented in red, that is responsible for our thinking, speaking, memory, and movement. And right behind that is the blue, parietal lobe, and responsible for our language and touch. Below that is represented in yellow, and responsible for our hearing, learning, feelings, and this lobe is called the temporal lobe. Right behind that in green is the occipital lobe, responsible for our color, perception, and vision. And a little bit below that in orange is cerebellum, responsible for our balance and coordination. And underneath that in purple is the brainstem, responsible for our breathing, heart rate, and temperature. Now, what are the risk factors of stroke? For us to easily identify or remember the risk factors, let us always remember that mnemonic strokes happen. S for smoking, T for thinners, R for rhythm, O for oral contraceptives, KIN for K or the family history, E for excessive weight or the obesity, and S for senior citizens. Now for the happen, H represented by hypertension, A for atherosclerosis, P physical inactivity, another P previous TIA, E for elevated blood glucose, and N for aneurysm. Now, let's talk about the signs and symptoms whenever someone is having a stroke. One thing that is very important is that stroke happens suddenly and we need to act fast because acting fast saves more brain cells. And it is also important to call a rapid response. To note the time. Noting the time when these signs and symptoms happened is also important because when you go to the hospital, it would be the first thing to be asked. Because if this is ischemic stroke, where there is a clot blocking the flow of blood to the brain, they can give a drug called TPA, which should dissolve that clot. So how can we tell that someone is having a stroke? The National Stroke Association suggests using the term FAST to help you recognize common symptoms of stroke. Now, the term FAST, F for face. If you notice a droop or an even smile on a person's face, this is a warning sign. A for arms. When the arms have numbness or weakness, it can be also a warning sign. You can ask the person to raise their arms if you are unsure. It's a warning sign if the arm droops down or isn't steady. Now, S for speech difficulty. Ask the person to repeat something. Slurred speech can indicate that the person is having a stroke. And T for time. Act fast if someone is experiencing stroke. Like what I've said before, acting fast saves more brain cells. Now, strokes can be prevented also. And we can prevent it by or lessen the chances of having a stroke by lowering our blood pressure, lowering cholesterol, be more active, stop smoking, eating healthy, less alcohol, and a good diabetes control if you have a diabetes. For my note, the only message that I could give in order to prevent stroke is through discipline and self-control. It is in our discipline and self-control on the foods we eat and the alcohol we intake, as well as the bad habits or vices we practice. For example, is smoking. Smoking is way too expensive, yet it also damages our health. Instead of smoking and drinking too much alcohol, why not try something that makes ourselves active, like taking a walk in the morning or participating in recreational activities. For senior citizens, it is very important that we always remind them with their medications, the food they eat, and the way we approach them. Let's try to be always soft to them because they got hurt or mad easily, and that triggers their hypertension or high blood pressure, and we all know that hypertension triggers stroke. After all, they are our parents, grandparents, and etc. Furthermore, always take care of ourselves and love it. Adios and till our next discussion again. Here's a short video that show how a stroke happens.
Everything? Well, not everything.
Dad, the side of your face is drooping. Mom?
It's probably nothing.
Dad, are you okay?
You're slurring. Why are you slurring? Raise your arms up in the air for me.
Dad, are you okay?
Gracie, call 911.
I just...
I'm gonna need an ambulance to send for Tim.
Tim, look at me, Gracie. Tell him to hurry.
Tim, look at me, Tim. Mom, what are we doing?
I think he's having a stroke.
I think my dad is having a stroke.
Tim, what's going on, baby? Cold? Are you cold, honey? Are you cold? Gracie? See, Gracie's gonna come, sweetheart. We're just gonna go in the ambulance right now. We're gonna go to the hospital, okay? Okay. Huh? I'm right here. Gracie, meet us there. I'm right here, okay. Okay, here we go. You just stay right here. You just stay and breathe. Tim? Dad?
How you feeling? I'm fine. Well, you've had a stroke. But because you got here quickly, you're looking at a full recovery.